So this will be fun. It's a nice, actually, you can see blue sky, so the smoke's beginning to clear out here. How are you guys? Let me know how you're doing. Now, if you're new to me, I'm Marshall Burtcher, and I help codependents rediscover their happiness after narcissistic relationships, trauma bonding, love addiction, all that, and help you get unstuck in your healing so you can actually move on in your life. So, also, if you are new to me, you're welcome to join the Thriving Beyond Codependency community. The link is above on Facebook, below on YouTube. We're happy to have you. This is your safe haven where you can find understanding, guidance, tools, and further help in your journey in breaking free of codependency and rediscovering your own happiness, your own well-being, who you are, and what really matters to you in your world. All right, so I'm going to get this shared out to the community here real quick. All right, let's see here. Boom, boom. So today we're going to be talking a bit about what I call compelled kindness and your right to be aggressive in your behalf. Because as codependents, we tend to, there we go. Yeah. Yes. All right. So as codependents, we tend to want to be nice. We want to be kind. We want to be gentle. We don't want to upset people. We don't want to rock the boat. We don't want to do things that they would feel upset or hurt by. And so we really avoid this aspect of ourselves, this aggressiveness that's our own advocate, our own inner chompiness, our own inner fighter. Or health, what I tend to call healthy fight, healthy flight. We tend to set that aside and work towards being kind and being nice to other individuals who are often the abusers that we're dealing with. And we think that we are wrong or bad or shameful for having an aggressive response to an aggressive behavior from them. Okay? So this is what I call compelled kindness. It's like, I have to be kind, I have to be nice. No matter what they're doing, I have to be kind and have to be nice. And this is programmed into us because we have been aggressive. We have shot back comments. We have physically maybe even been aggressive with someone or emotionally aggressive with them when they were harming us, when they were violating a boundary, or ignoring us or neglecting us, and then they play the victim. They claim that we're so terrible and they're so hurt and they're everyone's wrong or you're wrong, and that they didn't deserve what they got, things like that. And then we internalize that as truth because we've never been conditioned to understand the validity of our own aggressiveness, our own right to stand up for ourselves and to put people in their places when they cross a boundary or violate something that's within our awareness for our own goodness. Instead, we've been conditioned to believe that what we do and how we do it's harmful to other people. And I'm here to tell you that's wrong. Now, yes, there's things we can do that would be harmful, that would harm another human being. But upsetting another person by saying no to them or by drawing a consequence by telling them, you do this again, I'm going to do this over here, and then doing what you said you would do is not harmful. You're not harming the well-being. You're not violating their body. You're not violating their identity. You're not attacking their emotions. You're not attacking their sense of worth or person. So those are the things that tend to harm people. You're also not attacking their property. You're stating a boundary and they are getting upset about it. They're hurt by a boundary because they don't get what they want. Well, welcome to real life, dude. And I'm saying that to the person that's having a tantrum, like a 3-year-old, for not getting what they want because you brought up a boundary. See, you have the right to say no because it's your resources. It's your well-being. It's your life. It's your world, not theirs. Right? And so they're not entitled to anything from you. It doesn't matter what the relationship is. There's a peer-to-peer relationship, meaning an adult-to-adult relationship, there's no entitlement So you can say no, and if they get upset, that doesn't mean you did something wrong. So their anger, their disappointment, their judgment doesn't mean anything went wrong or you did something wrong or harmful. They want you to think that so that you'll give them what they want. That's the goal here. You're being gaslit into believing that your behavior, saying no, being even aggressive or highly assertive with a boundary, and then executing it, was somehow selfish and wrong. And once they can get you to believe that, then they can get whatever they want from you. See, abusive, toxic people abhor boundaries. They don't want boundaries because then they can't get their cookie. They can't get the supply they want that they feel entitled to. And they're going to gaslight and put you down for establishing a boundary in order to get you to change. This is one of those key red flags to look for when you're getting to know somebody, because how a person responds to your boundary defines how they're going to treat your territory, and it's going to fundamentally define the quality of the relationship. Because people who care about how you feel, people who have empathy, people who understand the privilege that's behind relationship, the concept of consent, respect that. They appreciate your time and your energy in their world. Those who feel entitled to that time and energy are going to try to violate it, and that will be a perpetual problem in the relationship, especially if this starts happening early on. Anytime boundary is violated, you have the right to stand up and say, stop, no. And if they get upset about that, well, you can say, well, this sounds like you got to work that out, because you don't have to make them feel better for you having a boundary. They're a grown-ass adult. They can go out and work it out and go get a therapist and work it out. They can grow up and mature and realize that, oh, I'm not entitled to something from you. Yeah, they can develop some respect for you. So this compelled kindness is violating your own boundaries. It's putting you in positions that don't advocate for you and that train other people to expect more from you than what you really want to give or what really works for you. So coming back to terms with your innate boundary, the right to occupy the space of no, and to be even aggressive in that no. Hi, Laura. Aggressive in that no is really important, because now people are going to learn your boundaries. They're going to learn what works for you and what doesn't, and they'll be better able to relate with you and have more honest, safe, and secure relationships because of this clarity. Okay, so, and this is uncomfortable as hell. It is not an easy thing to say no, especially at first, and it's even harder to just execute the consequence you establish, because we have experienced the withdrawal of love. We have experienced severe relational punishment and consequence for standing up for ourselves, and so our body, our attachment system, our nervous system activates in that space, and we get a lot of anxiety. We may even feel paralyzed. We may have nightmares. We may dread it. And that's just the indicator that you've been abused in your autonomy. Somebody abused you and taught you to feel that way about you. It is not an indicator that you're doing something wrong. Okay? That's the difference here. So, healing that requires us to come back into a position of kindness towards ourselves and permission to be aggressive, permission to occupy our emotions, and then to share them and communicate them in a way that's clear and direct with ourselves and with others. And beneath that is really the work on healing trauma. Healing the attachment trauma, the fear of being abandoned, and moving into a secure, connected state with yourself and with others. And then discrete trauma, where people have done things that have actually violated our well-being, and bringing closure to those. This is the foundation to restoring our sense of autonomy and our sense of power in our life. And part of that healing is getting comfortable with the right to assert ourselves and let other people live with it. I call this indifference, the right to not care. It's your second right, because I teach that we have two rights. We have the right to occupy space and the right not to care. When I embraced the right not to care, then I stopped obsessing about what other people think and feel about the choices I'm making in my world that have to do with me. Now, when it came to choices I was making that affected relationships around me, I had to learn to, let's communicate what we want and what's going to happen or what change is going to happen. Let's empathize with their feelings about what's going on with them. Now, this is in regards to healthy people. With unhealthy people, I just state what I'm going to do and I'm out. Because there's no more tolerance to a toxic person. I don't believe that we should tolerate toxic people. I don't believe they deserve a special pass to grow. If they're in their adult years and they're behaving like 3-year-olds, well, it's pretty, the potential of them changing is extremely small, and it isn't your job to raise them. It's their job to raise themselves. So I found my life got a lot simpler when I just started building relationships and friendships and maintaining friendships with healthy people who are already healthy. So I got healthier, maintained those ones. And then building healthy relationships with healthy people. And I just stopped playing with the toxic ones in my world. I was done. Moved on. Life is a lot simpler when you don't have to deal with managing somebody else's emotions and their chaotic nature. So this gives us the power to know ourselves, because we have the right to be aggressive. We have the right to assert ourselves in ways that are clear and sometimes really choppy in response to aggressive behavior or abusive behavior from another person. So one thing we forget with codependency is that people earn what they get. So you say, hey, don't do that. You do this again, I'm out. I'm done. I'm giving you one chance. You do this again to me, I'm out. And then they do the thing and you leave. You didn't harm them. You didn't do something wrong. They harm themselves. They earn the consequence. You stated the consequence. Now you executed it. And they get to live with it. They're not victims. They chose it. See? We have to understand there's a cause and effect going on in relationship. And when an abusive person harms someone, then they get a response back. Sometimes that's very aggressive, very defensive. The abuser earned what they got. I don't fault victims of abuse for being physically or emotionally or verbally aggressive with their predator, because that's their defense. It's just that simple. The predator earned it. They're not a victim. They deserve what they get, especially when you're very clear with it. So if you struggle with guilt or with shame about having to assert yourself, consider giving yourself permission to own and to honor the part of you that stood up for you in such a way to protect your well-being, and that you aren't at fault. They earned the consequence. They get to live with it. Okay? Because again, perpetrators, abusers are not victims. You're the one being victimized. You're the one being violated. So allow yourself to have that aggressive tendency. Allow yourself to check your compelled kindness by going, is this aligned with me? Is it okay? Am I suppressing aggression? Am I suppressing anger? Am I suppressing a response that makes sense for the situation? And then you can always play with the question, who do I want to be in this situation, in order to tap into what's really aligned for you, what really matters for you, and what gives you a sense of power and guidance in that situation. Just make sure that it's not guided by shame or guilt or fear. And I tend to try to align with what feels like it's loving and has integrity to me, and that I will want to be that, and I want to live with the consequence of that thing. Okay? Now there's this other rub that tends to happen for us in codependency, and that is when we encounter other people being really blunt with their boundaries. We see this a lot in differences and discussion or even arguments on social media about topics. And this can feel like, for a codependent, you might be encountering like a toxic person or an abusive or even narcissistic person if that individual isn't really tolerating your contribution to their conversation. It could be also seen as someone coming into your conversation aggressively and saying, hey, but what about this and this and this? We can interpret that aggression, depending on how it's termed and how we're interpreting words on a screen, as this person's toxic. We have to be really careful to understand that toxicity isn't a one-off event. It is a persistent pattern of behavior in a person's character. It's how they show up in a range of situations, not just a one-off event in a specific context, because people have bad days, right? And so remember that we need to look at a pattern of behaviors. We need to look at a larger spectrum to understand where a person fits on the scale of unhealthy or toxic to healthy and trustworthy or benign. So there's nuance in some of this, right? But if you've known a person for a long time and they're suddenly becoming aggressive with you, it's a good opportunity to step back and say, hey, what's going on? Can we talk about this? Because it seems like there's been a change for you, and I'm not sure where we stand. That's how we approach it as a healthy person. We want to be mindful about context and giving people some generosity, some space in which to be understood in their world. So, all right. Sure, a narcissist will gaslight or smear campaign you. That's fine. I mean, that's just telling you what they are. But you're not going to know that until down the road. So it's important not to project onto things or onto people what they might be or what we think they might be until we see a persistent pattern of behavior. That's the key there, because we're not great about it. Yep. No, well, it depends on the context. If you're responding well to my comments about discussions on like Facebook or something, because it can be different. It really is contextually sensitive. But if they're perpetually in a relationship you're in, or you're their friendship, and they're not actually responding to your concerns, your boundaries, and they're not showing understanding or empathy on a chronic basis, yeah, you've got a problem. It's again that persistent pattern of behavior. Because I'm not always a kind and nice person. I have my limits, and when people cross them, I can become very aggressive when they do that, and that can be really unpleasant for them, because I'm like, nope, you stop, and you stop now. It's done. Yeah, that kind of thing. And sometimes for those of us who've dealt with traumatic relationships, that can be interpreted in a number of different ways. So we've got to remember context, because I'll tell you, codependency and the codependent brain forgets context. It looks at things in very narrow slices, just like a narcissistic brain does. And that's because we live in a polarized black and white thinking paradigm, and we have to expand that to what's called gray space thinking or spectrum thinking, going, okay, what's the context? What's going on here? Who do I know this person to be? If I don't know them, what assumptions am I making about them? Things like that. We got to be really, really mindful about that. But ultimately, you also need to check in with your intuition, your gut, and find out if this is just something you want to deal with or not. You're going to have a lot more success in that. So Robin asks, what about losing opportunities in systemic situations that are almost everywhere? I don't know your context, Robin. I don't know what that means. You'd have to be much more specific than that, because systemic situations is not a term that has any definition for me. So, yeah, I'd need more detail on that one. So, but otherwise, guys, it's okay to stand up for yourself and say no, push against, or to at least, establish a consequence for a behavior that violates your territory, and let them deal with it. We don't always have to be nice. We don't always have to be kind. We have the right to be aggressive and assert ourselves in a way that protects ourselves and that allows us to move forward in our world. So there you go, guys. That's today's training. You have a great day. Be safe out there. Keep yourself well. Remember that you're worth knowing, loving, and keeping. And we have the Unmasking the Narcissist masterclass coming up here in 6 days. So it's a week from yesterday. So it's this coming Wednesday on the 23rd. Check that out. The link is above on Facebook, below on YouTube. It's free. Get your seat. And then I will see you guys then. Have a great day. Bye-bye.